Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia, it's time for Cherokee Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Cherokee Business Radio. Stone Payton here with you this morning, and today's episode is brought to you in part by our community partner program, the Business RadioX Main Street Warriors, defending capitalism, promoting small business, and supporting our local community. For more information, go to mainstreetwarriors.org. And a special note of thanks to our title sponsor for the Cherokee chapter of Main Street Warriors, Diesel David Inc. Please go check them out at dieseldavid.com. You guys are in for a real treat this morning. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with Happy Healthy Caregiver, Elizabeth Miller. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Stone.
Oh, what a delight to have you in studio. I got a ton of questions, Elizabeth. I'm almost certain we won't get to them all. But I think a great place to start is if you could share with me and our listeners mission, purpose. What are you and your team really out there trying to do for folks?
Okay, I had to laugh a little bit about the team because I'm a solo carepreneur, Stone. I do have a couple consultants that help me with stuff, but for the most part, it's been me. Since 2015, I started Happy Healthy Caregiver because I wanted to provide education, support, and resources for family caregivers, so people who are caring for their loved ones, maybe at home, maybe in a nearby senior living community, and so forth. And I stumbled on this profession because I just really felt like my husband and I were squeezed in the sandwich generation, so caring for older adults while raising our kids, working full time in the peak of our careers, and drowning in overwhelm and feeling like, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard to care for people that we love? So I started blogging and layering on things over the years. And where I've landed now, 9 years later, is I provide education through speaking to companies, in particular employers who are trying to help their working family caregivers make caregiving more sustainable, could be organizations. And I've also kind of found myself as an accidental influencer where I'm helping other companies who are trying to put their products and services in front of family caregivers and amplifying them through my podcast, my newsletter, and resources like that. But what I'm all about essentially is supporting family caregivers, helping them to make their caregiving journey sustainable so they can mitigate burnout.
So 9 years in, what are you finding the most rewarding? What's the most fun about the work for you?
I love the speaking. So funny little story about me is I studied broadcast journalism at Penn State University, never really used it, spent my professional career in IT and corporate strategy. And now I get to kind of take that back and really highlight what's working for them through the podcast. So speaking through the podcast and then speaking to groups of people, because I'm finding that, I wasn't alone in feeling the way that I have felt. And this is a way for me to scale the message and fast track people to the resources that can help them so that they're not, wandering in the dark like I felt like I was doing.
So what was it like when you first started speaking to groups? Was it nerve-wracking or did you take to it really easy? Or?
Well, it was nerve-wracking. And I think, part of that is keeps you honest. Like you want to do a good job. So you get that butterflies. But really what changed for me is, rather than all the focus kind of coming to me and feeling like I'm in the spotlight, I really felt like what I want to do instead was almost like a lighthouse and project out. That wasn't necessarily about me, but it was about them getting the support and resources so that, their evening, their tomorrow could be a little different than it was today.
And this podcast, you're a veteran podcaster. It's not like you got this idea or your nephew has a podcast and you thought you'd take a swing. And you've been doing this for a while, yeah?
I've been doing this for 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess 8 years for the podcast. So what makes Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast different than other podcasts in this care space is that I honestly feel like the real experts in family caregiving are the family caregivers. So you have to have either been or currently are a family caregiver to be considered as a guest on the show. And then I want to, figure out what has helped you in your caregiving journey and how you have been able to infuse self-care in little small ways, either to recover from burnout or to mitigate burnout.
And the name of the podcast is Happy Healthy Caregiver.
Yep.
So easy enough to find. It's probably on the podcasty platform thingies.
It's out there. It's everywhere. It's on YouTube as well. So if people want to watch it, they can watch it. And there's a show notes page too, because I know caregivers are doing a lot and they're probably listening while they're on the go. And so then we're going to keep all the resources and things that we talk about on the website.
So I guess I would characterize my situation as pre-caregiver.
Okay.
So
expectant, I call that.
Yeah. This conversation is very timely for me. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida. My folks have moved up here. They're now 2 minutes away.
Okay.
They're 82 and 84. But I got to believe at some point I'm going to need to learn about how to access the right resources, and I'm going to need to learn some things. And so this is a very timely conversation for me. So, I'd love to, let's dive into the work a little bit.
Okay.
And the work that you're doing for the organizations, but maybe any insights on, what is happening and needs to be happening in the home.
Well, I'm glad that we met, first of all, because you're not going to be like flailing your arms in the deep end of the ocean. And I think for some people, caregiving happens overnight, with a fall or a crisis situation. And then some people, which definitely was my situation, you can kind of see it coming. And mine was a little bit of a mudslide situation with my folks and my in-law. But, where I really have focused on what I provide is, a lot of people were telling me I should take care of myself, and they were shoulding on me, I call it. And
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, shooting all over me. And listen, I'm going in, I'm taking the notes with my mom in particular to doctor's appointments. I've got a walker, sometimes a wheelchair and a walker, and asking all the questions. And there were constantly, you should be doing this for your person. You should be doing that. And I thought, I am losing it. Like, I feel like I should be doing enough by now. And so that was a really tough situation, is just to feel like there's so many people needing you. And I call that like feeding a nest of hungry birds, where, the birds are never satiated. They're just constantly needing like work, your pets, your care recipients, your relationships, all of that, my kids. And so I just felt like this should not be this hard. But also at that same time, it came really clear to me that my health was changing and that my health and happiness was suffering, and that I needed to infuse more self-care into my day. And, we should take care of ourselves, but what does that really look like? Like when you're buried, in helping someone with medications and appointments and, trying to coordinate their care and all of that. Like, you have already got a full-time job, Stone. And so you've got a full plate, and then this caregiving stuff starts happening, and you've got to learn a whole new terminology. And who are you going to go to? Everybody kind of is specialized in their own area, and it's very fragmented, our healthcare system. So, I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm certainly still a work in progress. I'm still a caregiver who cares now for a support caregiver for my brother, who was born with an intellectual and developmental disabilities. So my parents are deceased. And, care is something then that my siblings and I have to kind of figure out how to share. And it's a completely different path than one caring for an older adult. But what I had to also come to terms with is that self-care is not just physical self-care. Like, we think about, going exercising and eating right. And maybe we even think about the quality of our sleep. But for caregivers, the nights out on the town and the massages are just not a thing that you can really put into your day. So figuring out those little micro acts that you can do in your day that you can infuse, and also thinking about it beyond physical. So social self-care, professional, spiritual, financial. I recognize 8 different categories of self-care, and I really encourage caregivers to try on different strategies, just like you try on clothes. See what maybe works for you and keep those in your closet, in your toolbox, and ditch what doesn't, because, what works for you, Stone, is going to be different than what works for me.
I'm sure that's true. Are there also, however, some common myths or mistakes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, for one, people think they're not a caregiver if the person doesn't live with them, but you're probably likely still making phone calls, taking them appointments. Long distance caregiving is a much more common thing these days than it used to be with the way that our society is so spread out. I learned a lot about senior living and assisted living, and kind of what I thought was a good fit and what really was a good fit was different. The first place we picked for my mom based upon the amenities and the look and feel, and hoping that was going to ease her transition. And what we really needed was a higher level of care. And so learning how to kind of ask those questions, creating a care team. A lot of us think that we can do caregiving by ourselves. And I've never seen that work, in the time a solo caregiver is, think about these communities. They have so many different people that do different roles, and we need that. And we don't have the expertise in all of the different areas. And some of us are better nurturers than others. So we have to kind of build out our team for our loved ones and for ourselves. So we have that support too.
So have you had the benefit of one or more mentors as you kind of found yourself in this space, or is it all individual hard-earned scar tissue, or did you get a little bit of help?
No, listen, everything is I've gotten so much from different people in my life, and a lot from our community, frankly. I'm very plugged into the senior living and the older adult groups. I got my certification as a certified senior advisor and a certified caregiving consultant so that I could learn more about these spaces, and have kept those certifications going. And so I don't have all the answers, but I hopefully can help people direct to get there a little quicker. I've learned so much about hospice and palliative care. There's a lot of myths in that space in general that people think you have to wait until the very end in order to utilize those services. I've seen the blank stare on people's faces when they realize that Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care and what that's going to mean to their finances. So there's, I need a team. I need a team of people too.
Now you are on the leadership team, speaking of teams, at this organization called ACAP. Talk a little bit about mission and purpose of ACAP and tell us what you guys are up to.
It's a great group. First of all, part of a leadership team. It stands for Adult Children of Aging Parents. It was created by Francis Hall out of North Carolina. It's a nonprofit group. And we have one here in Cobb and Cherokee. And the whole premise of it is to offer programs to adult children of aging parents in a very no sales, no pressure environment. So I don't go and promote myself as Happy Healthy Caregiver there. I don't wear my name tags or anything. We have spots for sponsors that pay to do that. They have tables set up. So certainly you can be a sponsor for an ACAP program. But we meet the third Thursday of every month. We're meeting September 19th is our next one. We've been having our group since February of this year, and all of the people on the leadership team have different roles in the senior community. My role for the leadership team is selecting the programs and finding the good speakers for our programs. And I hope that my experience as a family caregiver can kind of help guide what I feel like might be valuable to put into that space. So, this topic this month, September 19th, is shielding loved ones from scams and fraud. It's a sick, sick world out there that people are preying on. People like my brother who, through Facebook, beautiful women asking him for gift cards happens on the regular. But there's also Medicare fraud and other things that happen. So we've got Jeff Donnelly from the Deputy Department in Cherokee is going to come speak. And then Jose Pinto talking about the Medicare fraud issues. So we've tried to pull in the people who have the expertise, but we've got other great topics this year. October is importance of being socially engaged and active. November, residential options when your loved one can no longer live at home and that no longer meets their needs. And then in December, funding sources as loved ones need more care. So all things that people need. And it's a very rich program environment that we follow a curriculum.
And where do you get together?
We meet at the Covenant Presbyterian Church off Canton Road. Okay. So we try to find a good location. For Cherokee and Cobb. It's a big area.
Sure. But this is the kind of meeting that someone like I should go to this thing, right?
Yeah, I think so, Stone.
Because it would really help me get prepared to help mom and dad and help me educate my brother who's down in Tallahassee.
Yes.
But there are you mentioned long distance. it doesn't have to be just me because I'm the one up here. I can get my brother Rusty. I can get Russ on the team too, right?
I got a lot of tips for your brother that he can do to support you and your parents from a distance. Yes. Like there's a lot. They could pay the bills. He can do research. He can plan, outings and events. He can find different programs for, so a lot of things can happen online. He can certainly send a DoorDash gift card, different things like that. But I like to say whether you're using ACAP or, other coaching services. I do some coaching, but I don't do a lot of it. It's just not scalable for me, but I certainly am willing to kind of get someone on the right track with a complimentary session. But the best day to find your support is on your best day. Because that's the problem with a lot of us is we wait for a crisis to happen before we're like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. There's all these different issues. What if you got in front of it and you went to programs like this and went to communities where you can learn from other people so that you have the tools and resources kind of building up and then you know how to put them into practice.
No, I love that. And I think that's true in a lot of arenas. Getting in front of it early is so much better than late.
Yes.
Right?
It's so hard though. We're not a culture that talks about these things. Like we're not good at it. But you could use this program, like you could use the scams and fraud program to open the dialogue and have the conversation and just say, I just heard this horror story. I've learned about this. People who I have known personally who are geniuses, like on paper, have fallen for scams that have cost them thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, man. All right. So going forward, what is next for you? Are you going to try to continue to scale? And we joked about team, but might there be like the Miller certified caregiver team out there at some point? Or what are your long-term plans for the business?
Yeah. It's funny. Like I have always kind of been a person who doesn't want to manage a big team. Even in my professional career, I was a leader without being a manager. I kind of like that same kind of process for what this looks like. I really have been leaning into the corporate world because they need employers, the good employees, to stay working, and it's costly for them to replace really good people. And we as family caregivers need the income now, and we need our benefits now, and we need our future income, through what we're saving through 401ks and stuff. So I've been partnering with companies, instead of doing like a one-off webinar, really to be a strategic partner with them and offer monthly caregiver support sessions for their employees and the educational seminars and workshops, and really helping them build out their employee resource groups. Their ERGs is kind of more and more companies have different ERGs for different groups. And so a good niche for me is a parent and caregiver type of, or disability ERG or veteran ERG, women's and so forth, but helping them because these people are running their ERGs on top of their day job.
Right.
So what can I do to help them with that? And I used to lead a women's ERG where I worked before. So I have that understanding of what that could look like. So I feel like that's where, doing more consulting and more integration with companies is really appealing to me right now.
So how does the whole sales and marketing thing work for a practice like yours? How do you get the new business or the conversation about maybe working?
Oh, yeah.
How does that work?
It's funny. That's this, like with all of us as entrepreneurs, Stone, like I feel like we've got this iceberg and there's the part that people see and then there's the rest of the stuff.
Right.
Yeah. For me, what that looks like is I use LinkedIn. I know that a lot of people that hire me are usually in the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging group or employee culture, or they're a co-lead for their employee resource group related to caregiving. So I search for those folks. I have like a CRM and a process to reach out to them. And then hopefully my search engine optimization is working with my, low budget that I've been able to put toward that. And people are finding me as well. So they're looking for those resources.
So when you're not doing this work, and I don't know when or where you'd find the time, but hobbies, interests, passions outside the scope of this work. My listeners know that I like to hunt, fish, and travel. Anything you nerd out about?
I love to try new things. I mean, that can be new restaurants. I love to travel. I think it heightens all the experiences. We're going to Traverse City for a wine vacation within my family. I love that my kids are over 21. We can do that. I'm playing pickleball. Yeah, I'm, I do a lot of walking. I've got my dogs that need to get out. I love to hike and try new trails. And my husband is an entrepreneur as well. So has his own beverage company.
Really?
That he co-founded here in Georgia called Good Days, drinkgooddays.com. And so, we do a lot of tastings and festivals so that people can try it. He's newly a sponsor for Kennesaw State University, which is exciting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a canned cocktail in a can. So he's been in the beverage business his whole life, and now he's out on his own. With a co-founder that lives in Athens.
Yeah.
So, but really focused on Georgia right now. So it's exciting to get, and so I'm, helping him behind the scenes for that.
And it must be really good for the both of you that the other person understands what an entrepreneur goes through, and you really can be very supportive of each other. And now I can send him an invoice because now he's
there you go, free advertising. Yeah, he'd actually be great to have on.
Well, we'll get him on sometime.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
he's a fun guy to talk to.
What's his name?
Jason. But we play pickleball together.
Yeah.
We really, I feel like we try to have a good balance. He cared for his mom too, so he certainly understands,
right.
The caregiving world of it, and lots of tearful conversations when I was trying to quit my job and say, look, I think I can do this full time. Like that takes a huge leap of faith. So he's my prom date. I married my prom date. So we're stuck together.
All right. Shout out for Jason. And we'll get him in the studio. I'd love to hear all about that company, how he built it up, what he's doing to scale. Yeah, that'd be fun. So, in a little bit, before we wrap, I'm going to ask for you for a couple of actionable pro tips.
Okay.
For those of us that are just beginning for this to even be on our radar. But before we go there, as if you haven't done enough already to try to serve people like me and the folks you're describing, you're also an author. Just tell us about the book.
Okay. So, I wrote a journal. It's called the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. It's a prompted journal. So on the top of every page is a question. And the goal of that was, I found journaling and writing to be very therapeutic for me when I was deep in this caregiving world. I had no business starting a business, right? I had lots of things going on. But I made time, two times a week went to Starbucks on a Wednesday and Friday morning, and I just started writing. And sometimes the tears were, coming out while we're writing. But, to talk about journaling with people is very intimidating, and not everybody is a writer. So I wanted them to have a low entry way to try it on, and by asking the questions. And the other thing that it does, I think, is that caregivers are really bad at putting focus back on themselves. So putting some of that back on them, and like, what did bring you joy when you were 10 years old? What does a perfect day look like for you? What would you do if the internet was broken for 3 days? And so talking about these things so that they can write it out, and just try it on and kind of put those words on paper could be a good step. And what I love, the unexpected benefit of it, is it really almost leaves a legacy behind if you continue to do it. And I know some people have added to it every year because it's, there's a general date at the top, and so you can add to it every year. But it would tell a lot about you, I think, if it were a little artifact that somebody discovered later on.
I never even crossed my mind, but my grandmother, who has passed, boy, had she filled this thing out.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't you love to have that?
Wouldn't you love to have that?
Yeah.
And, sometimes with older adults too, I know people have used it for starting conversations. Like my mom was bedridden the last 2 years of her life. So her world was very small. And so you had to get creative about the things that you would talk about and bring up. And this could be a conversation starter for somebody like in that situation where you could talk to them. I think even for a professional caregiver that's working with older adults could benefit from it. So it's the goal is to just, prioritize self-care a little bit.
Well, you've already shared so much, so many great ideas, and you've got my wheels clicking. But let's leave our listeners with a couple of, I call them pro tips, a couple of actionable items. And look, gang, the number one pro tip is reach out and connect with Elizabeth. That's your number one pro tip. But let's leave them with a couple things.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to lose. You get a complimentary session.
Oh, okay.
So do that for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think finding your community is important. Starting the conversations early with your older adults and your care recipients about what they want to be true. I think sometimes we have our own expectations about what that looks like. And maybe use this conversation as a way to start that conversation and just say, I listened to this today. We've never really had a chat about, what you'd want to be true or what does aging well look like for you. And I think you could learn a lot and listen. I would recommend listening more. And then schedule your self-care. Like we think that you're not going to find the time. You're going to have to create the time. So whatever that looks like, start small, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Maybe it's a stretch break in the middle of your day. Maybe it's a ritual that you do in the morning. I mean, it could even be just, sitting with the journal and a cup of coffee or, I think for me, it's getting outside is really critical to me every day. It's, I put things through a filter that if it's peace of mind or energizes you or is just pure joy, then that's self-care. So sometimes self-care is cleaning off your desk. But I think trying on different things and encourage you to kind of maybe pat yourself on the back for what you're already doing, that you didn't call it self-care, and then trying on some new things and schedule that time for yourself.
All right, we got a ton of coordinates that we need to leave for our listeners because I want to make sure that they can tap into the ACAP. I want them to be able to find your book. I want them to listen to your podcast. I want them to know how to connect with you. So
okay.
Let's leave them with some coordinates for all of that.
So ACAP is acapcommunity.org. And head over to the chapter for Cobb and Cherokee, and you can register for the programs and get the address there. Happy Healthy Caregiver, anything that you want to know about that, you can go to happyhealthycaregiver.com. You'll link to the social media, the book, the podcast, the coaching appointment, the speaking, whatever you want. It's there.
Well, Elizabeth, it has been an absolute delight having you in the studio this morning. Thank you for your insight, your perspective, your enthusiasm. You're a breath of fresh air. You are doing such important work, and we sure appreciate you.
Thank you, Stone. Thanks for filling my bucket today.
My pleasure. All right, until next time, this is Stone Payton for our guest today, Elizabeth Miller with Happy Healthy Caregiver, and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you again on Cherokee Business Radio.